So we got our next 3 sessions. We've got 2 of our community showcases in this session 3. And then a presentation on AI access, not AI ability, from the brilliant Hal Carver. But first off, the first of our community showcases from chaos to calm, leading in the permacrisis. If you are in the roundtables, just remember there's a roundtable starting right now. But if you're here for this one, welcome to the stage, Ceri.
Hi, thanks. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the intro. Lovely to be here with you all today. And I want to begin by asking you all to give yourselves an enormous round of applause, please. Huge round of applause. Yes, because we made it. Yes, folks, we have made it to the future. 2025, utopia. A time of climate stability, of predictable weather systems, a time of international peace and tranquility. We have a healthy work-life balance, and tech is largely seen as a force for good, hooray. And we have unbiased media, factual information at hand at all times. And our richest members of society use their vast wealth and global political influence to invest in projects that are for the good of us all. Yay. Okay. So it turns out that maybe it's not quite so utopian. Welcome to the permacrisis, where things are maybe less than we would like them to be. And this leaves people with, unfortunately, a sense of unease. And this pervasive, ongoing stress affects us all rather profoundly. And the advice for leaders is often overused and predictable. Sometimes it's outright harmful and wrong, so mindfulness has got some mixed results, so careful how you use that one. And some of the advice is actually quite fluffy and really rather meaningless. I still to this day don't entirely understand what take care of yourself means. Sorry, be kinder to yourself. So we're not going to do that today. I'm not going to patronize you. Instead, today I'm going to take you through a neuroscientific look at your brain under stress and take a look at the profound impact that has, exactly in the places that we can't see it. Then we're going to look at some of the consequences of that, how that impacts us, how that impacts the people around us, and we're going to look at what we say, what we think, what we do, what we remember, what we perceive, and how much we're aware of any of those things. And then we're going to look finally at what you can do about any of that. So practical ideas for how to lead in the permacrisis. So my name's Ceri. I'm a coach and consultant. I work largely with technical leadership teams, but also with technical teams. And I say that my work is to salvage cracked relationships. And I do that by closing the gap between intent and impact. And my background is in behavioural science, and I'm currently studying neuroscience, so I use that to inform my work. And I'm no stranger to stress myself. I am blessed with CPTSD and FND, that's functional neurological disorder. That means I have an over-enthusiastic immune system, which after my second bout of meningitis actually meant that I won one of these for 6 months as a walking aid. That was fun. Essentially what it means is that my brain takes a tiny threat and turns it into a catastrophe. So I have to manage my own stress. I had to learn how to manage stress. And fortunately, for my work, that's rather helpful to the people that I work with. So I want to tell you a story, and this is 2025, so I'll do it with some help from AI, of course. And I want to tell you about a director of digital that I worked with. And this director, he was leading a large international organization. And because of client confidentiality, let's call him David. Now, when David arrived at the organization, of course, everything was behind schedule, everything was over budget, and we had stakeholders continually screaming for results. And David was... There we go. David was brought in, he was seen as the savior, right? He was there to fix everything. But within 2 weeks of arriving, things went from bad to worse. A major investment partner actually withdrew their funding, leaving a huge budget deficit. The new government that had come in actually reset everyone's priorities, leaving the entire sector in turmoil. And 1 week later, around 80 people handed in their notice over the course of 5 days. Yeah. And those that were left were given, well, they were left with a sense of unease. They were wondering what's going to go wrong next. They were left, I've messed up my microphone. They were left demotivated, disengaged, and not delivering. And the people that were left, people kept going off sick, some of them with burnout, some of them with stress. It was a mess. Now, David, when he arrived, of course, as a good leader, he had goals. With the market in turmoil and the team under this much pressure, he wanted to bring stability to the organization. But he kept saying, I can't slow down long enough to think. He said, I need my teams to take the initiative, but I can't trust them because they don't have the skills or the experience to do that. And I want to retain my top talent. I want to create space where the most talented don't leave, but I don't know how to motivate staff that are so stressed. Finally, I want to enjoy my work again. Within 2 weeks, he was not enjoying the role. I want to come in to work feeling less anxious, less exhausted, but I need to do that without looking weak or incapable. And yet, when anybody asked, how are you? David always responded with, yeah, really busy. Yeah. And this is a problem because we treat stress as if it's somehow a badge of honor. But what it actually is a huge risk. It's a brain tax that degrades our judgment. And what's worse about it is it leaves us often blind to the impact of that risk, impact to how blindly we're judging things. And we're often totally unaware of how we're responding. So let's look at how that works using your hand. So this is a fabulous model that I love to share with people. It's a model of your brain using your hand. You can do it yourself if you take your hand, put your thumb across your palm like that, and close your fingers down over the top. So this is the brain in the hand, or hand-brain model from Dr. Dan Siegel. And you imagine that this is your brain. This is the area of your brain that sorts out your heart, your liver, your autonomous bodily systems. These 4 fingers here, though, that's where we're looking at today. This is your prefrontal cortex in the middle here, these 2 fingers. This is your cortex. So this is the area of your brain at the front right here. This is the area that's largely connected with executive function. So things like decision-making, problem-solving, creativity, your rational thinking self, finding solutions to things. And this is you in a calm state. What about when things go wrong? Well, this is you when we flip our lids. So this is called a flipped emotional state. And you can see on your thumb knuckle here, this is the amygdala. And what happens is this triggers an emotional response, and it leaves your prefrontal cortex metaphorically, not literally physically, but metaphorically disconnected. So the response that we have, whether that's fear or anger or anxiety, that response bypasses your cortex. So this rational, creative, problem-solving part is no longer really in the picture. It means that we have less connectivity across those areas. It means that our function is reduced, so we're less able to find solutions, we're less able to be creative, we're less able to solve problems. It also impacts our attention, so we have worse attention, we have worse memory, and we have significantly reduced emotional regulation. In your brain, the response looks like this. So on the right-hand side, this is us under stress. So that's your brain and your heart. That's how those are both responding. You've got neurons in your brain, neurons in your heart, and neurons in your gut. So it provokes a response in all 3 of them. Yeah, it has a significant effect. So let's run a quick diagnostic. I'm going to ask you some questions for you to think about for a moment. How is this showing up in your leadership? Are you ever impatient in meetings? Do requests actually sometimes feel like a threat or an attack? How do you feel when people are critical? And how do you feel when they deliver bad news? So your answers aren't individual to you necessarily. These are things that we all are likely to have a negative response to. These are things that are likely to trigger that flipped response. And they might show you that perhaps you can see how stress changes both your perception and your interpretation, and as a result, what we then believe. And it creates this negative spiral. So the threat detection increases. That means that we become more reactive. That means that we then feel more threatened, which then increases the level of threat detection, which then carries on. And so we find ourselves in a position where, well, so normally we're thinking about the past and the future. Normally mental chatter takes us backwards and forwards. But when we're under stress, the impact of that increases. So we end up ruminating, so thinking negatively about things that happened in the past and telling ourselves all the negative reasons and motivations. Or we end up catastrophizing. So everything that's coming in the future is going to be absolutely awful as a result. And we don't notice that these things are only thoughts. None of this is real. None of us has the ability to predict the future yet. And so these are just thoughts. They're not actually facts. They're imagined scenarios, imagined threats, imagined insults, but they feel really real. So what's the consequence? Well, all of this has a significant impact on metacognition. Metacognition is our awareness of our thought processes and our understanding of the patterns that are behind them. And when there's more ambiguity, when there's more uncertainty, when there's more complexity, when there's more sense of threat, we become less aware of our own awareness. That means we're less aware of how correct we are, and we're less aware of our emotional or rational response, and less aware of our own distorted ways of thinking. We're also less aware of our impact. So how am I communicating? Is what I'm saying actually quite violent or quite aggressive? Am I being condescending or patronizing? Am I actually being quite rude without realizing it? Now for David, he thought that he was acting in people's best interests. He was acting for the betterment of the organization. But the people had a very different experience. There was a significant gap between his intent and his impact. And David was completely unaware of this. Now, the usual suggestions that we're given to face a crisis are that we should lead with strength, with confidence, with constancy. But with reduced metacognition, it meant that for David, people were interpreting his strength as aggressive, his confidence as egotistical, and his constancy as rigid. So people were experiencing him as overbearing and aggressive and ignorant and rigid and unaware. It also creates dissonance in what we say versus what we do. So we might ask for one thing, but we reward a completely different behavior. So for David, he said that we needed more collaboration, but what he was rewarding without realizing it was competition and blame. And then this instability and uncertainty made everything feel quite unsafe. Now, there's also a gap as a result of all of this in what we experience and what we remember, the experiencing self and the remembering self. So it changes, and the more stress we're under, it has a more significant effect. It changes what we remember, so how we remember a conversation or a meeting, or if we ask somebody to do something, or we give some instructions, or if we make an agreement. The more stress we're under, that will actually change what we think we agreed to or what we thought we instructed people to do. So for David, it was really frustrating. And what about for his people? Well, stress, unfortunately, is contagious. But when you add in powerlessness, and his people were at this point feeling quite powerless, the impact is pretty miserable. So they were experiencing disassociation. They were suffering from motivational paralysis. They were experiencing burnout. David realized that he had to change something. He knew that he had to make calm a quality, not a luxury, a quality standard. And so we began with some inner work. We looked at what we notice and ways to reframe how he was thinking. And then, come back. And then we looked at outer work. So we looked at what he was saying and doing and his ways of working. There we go. Now, these are essential skills that we need as leaders in order to be able to excel in our current climate. We need to be able to stay calm. We need to retain these abilities. But when the amygdala takes over, we lose executive function. And this changes our perspective, it changes our patience, our planning, our emotional intelligence suffers as a result. But these are the core elements of great leadership. So we can use the hand-brain model to catch ourselves reacting in the moment, in real time. So you can notice when you're experiencing brain fog or when you can't think clearly. You can notice that this response is happening if you have stomach churn or nausea, if you get a buzzing sound or burning ears, if you feel really hot or if you have prickly skin, if you have a racing heart or shaking hands, or if you suddenly feel really cold. Now, this is cortisol, the stress hormone. It takes around 90 seconds to subside. So if you can ride through that 90-second gap, then you can take a pause, take a moment to re-reflect, and then come back again 90 seconds later. So in the middle of a meeting, suggesting taking a pause. There's nothing wrong with doing that, so everybody can reset. And that's what David did. Once we'd got those basics under everybody's belt and the team was using the hand-brain model as a team to help them notice when things were going wrong, we then moved into metacognition. How are we going to address metacognition? Now, to develop self-awareness, we need to set intent. Now, that might seem like a soft skill, but actually it's a strategic edge. We used clean language, so clean language questions in meetings. We used them at the start of meetings. We used to write the answers down on sticky notes, and then we would put them up somewhere visible, either on the wall, or people would stick them on their notebooks or on the desk next to them, so that that intent that they set at the start of a session stayed with them throughout the rest of the session. And this is really important because setting intent actually shapes how we think for the rest of the conversation. So setting intent before a difficult conversation changes how we show up in that conversation. That changes how we feel in the moment. It changes what we're able to cope with, what we're able to deal with. That then shapes our language and our tone. And language and tone are really important because that then changes the picture that the other person has in their head. It shapes how they feel in the meeting as well. In fact, there was a really interesting study from Loftus and Palmer where they showed people videos of a car crashing. And then they asked them questions later to see what they thought about the video. They asked them questions like, how fast were the cars going when they crashed into each other? How fast were the cars going when they hit? And how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? And the people who were given the word smashed rather than hit had estimated the cars as going significantly faster than the people who were given the word hit. They were also asked how much broken glass was there as a result of the crash. There was no broken glass, but the people who were given the word smashed said that there was broken glass as a result. So the words that we use that are generated based on how we're feeling in the moment change the way that we feel. They also change the way that the people around us are interpreting what's being said. So we also used key questions and phrases, again, to help David to stay present in the moment, to be metacognitive in the moments where it really mattered. Again, he would keep these stuck on his monitor so that they were always present when he had online meetings, or they were stuck on a Post-it on his phone so that when he was going away to another meeting, he had those phrases available to him. Or he wrote them at the top of his notebook. And we had a conversation ahead of any significant meetings, and we wrote down some key phrases that he might want to use ahead of those meetings. And the questions that he would ask himself, especially before he was meeting with his people, what do I really want here? And what am I willing to let go of in order to achieve that? What do you need to meet my need? And how can I meet that need? What can I do? What are the steps that I can take? And what is the gap between my impact and what I intended? And he would ask himself things like, how did that conversation go? He would also get feedback from his people so that he would get that information in the moment. So where he couldn't see where he was going wrong, people would be able to tell him. Okay, so we then moved on to looking at the outer world. So we looked in two areas, both his people and the process. So what do we say and do, and how do we work? So for people, we work towards creating a high-performance engineering environment using a model from David Rock called the SCARF model. And this is a pragmatic look at meeting people's needs. So the SCARF model it describes that all of us have some key needs. We have a need for status, we have a need for certainty, we have a need for autonomy, for relatedness, and for fairness. So if we want to establish whether we are meeting people's need for fairness, we can ask ourselves questions like, am I humiliating or shaming people? Is there anything in what I said that could be seen as patronizing or contemptuous? Am I appreciating this person's effort or their skill, the hard work that they've put in? And do I ever share my own failure? Do I ever lower my status in a group and bring other people's up by being willing to share that things have gone wrong for me as well? For certainty, he could ask himself questions like, am I giving people clear information? Am I sharing data? Am I giving clear timelines, clear expectations? Am I sharing the risks? Even in this situation, saying what isn't possible can be incredibly helpful. In terms of autonomy, do people actually have a choice here? Are they able to give their opinion? And will it be acknowledged if they do? And then for relatedness, am I including people in decisions that might affect them? Am I informing them about changes as early as possible? Do people feel that they can ask me for help? And am I practicing Swiss cheese listening, or am I attentively listening? So am I Swiss cheese listening? That's where you go, sorry, pardon, what? It's not necessarily quite so obvious, but if you lose track of what people are saying in the middle of them saying something, that's Swiss cheese listening. The opposite is actually trying to respond to build on what they say, asking them insightful questions and letting go of what we're thinking in order to hear what they're saying. So curiosity over trying to tell people. And then for fairness, are the rules the same for everyone? And do people get enough credit for their work? Next, we moved on to looking at their process, so looking at how they were working. And we did this in order to reduce the cognitive load as much as possible in the spaces where we could do that, and reduce the amount of firefighting that was going on. We wanted to focus on energy and capacity design, so there were a few different things that we did. The first thing that we did was we practiced something called 5-minute meeting offsets. So we started 5-minute meetings 5 minutes after the hour and made sure that we ended them at 5 minutes too. That was to create some space in between back-to-back meetings, especially online ones. So that helped people to actually get ready for their next meeting before they finished after they finished the first one. But we also looked at ways that we could leverage AI to be a thinking partner. We weren't asking it to be creative for us. We wanted to use it more as a cognitive exoskeleton. So we wanted the AI models to carry the load so that David could focus on his strategy, focus on being creative, focus on supporting his people. We asked it to look at the basics for us, to look at create document summaries, to look at inbox noise reduction, and turning scattered notes into concise briefings. So we used some prompts and some tools to actually help David to do that, which was quite effective. That was a great place to begin as a basic first step. Next, we used AI to look at our blind spots and our risks. So we used it as a decision check. We used it to look at risk scenarios and actually predict where things might go wrong and spot the gaps for us. And as a cognitive load audit. So where am I likely to go wrong today? What are the things that are likely to impact me? And then we used, for more complex reasons, so we actually used the SCARF model to build the prompt. And we used this to then look at comms. So how are these comms going to land with people? Or he wanted to go through a reorg. Of course he did. So what are the steps that we need to go through in order for this to impact people in the best possible way? Where are we likely to be hurting people? Again, using SCARF to inform us. So we could use it for that impact planning. And we also used it as a pre-mortem. Okay, that's that one. Okay, so we have spent some time today looking at your brain in crisis, the consequences, and what you can do. But let me finish today by saying you don't have to lead better. We don't lead better by pushing harder. Whilst when we're in crisis, people do need more clarity, they do need more conviction, we can't just push people and threaten people and scare people into performing better. Change and unpredictability are a natural side effect of being alive, and the best tech isn't created under panic. Instead, we want to treat our culture as a product, design it intentionally, so context engineering, but for our teams. We want to maintain our inner systems with the same care and attention that we would put into our work. That's because calm teams make better decisions. They create better products. So we want to be leading from a position of safety and calm, not from stress. Your team and your future self will thank you for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.